Good morning, everyone. It's Thursday, November 12th, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-kyan. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. For the first time since Joe Biden's declared election win, President Moon Jae-in held phone talks with the president-elect this morning. The two are expected to have discussed Korean Peninsula affairs such as nuclearization and peace, as well as ways to strengthen the Seoul-Washington alliance. To mark Veterans Day on Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump and presumptive President-elect Joe Biden both attended separate memorials to pay tribute to the nation's veterans. And Europe continues to see a surge in COVID-19 infections and deaths. The UK reported over 50,000 deaths, and Italy also reached 1 million infections since the initial outbreak early this year. Our top story this morning, President Moon Jae-in held his first phone conversation with the presumptive U.S. President-elect Joe Biden this morning. The call took place at 9 a.m. Korea time and comes 4 days after Biden was projected to have won the election. The two are expected to have discussed Korean Peninsula issues as well as ways to strengthen the Seoul-Washington alliance. Following the talks, Moon tweeted that he congratulated Biden and that the two reaffirmed their commitment to a robust bilateral alliance and peaceful and prosperous Korean Peninsula. Moon added that he looks forward to working closely with Biden to meet global challenges, including COVID-19 and climate change. The top office has yet to issue an official statement on the talks. After not being seen in public for days, U.S. President Donald Trump made a visit on Wednesday to the Arlington National Cemetery to mark Veterans Day. The presumptive President-elect Joe Biden also attended a separate memorial to mark the occasion. Our Kim Hyo-sun reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump and presumptive President-elect Joe Biden both marked Veterans Day on Wednesday by attending separate memorials. Trump and First Lady Melania Trump visited Arlington National Cemetery for a wreath-laying ceremony. This was President Trump's first public appearance since the election was projected for Biden on Saturday. He was joined by Vice President Mike Pence, with both of them not saying much. This comes as President Trump and his campaign are forging ahead with legal action to challenge the vote counting procedures in several states, including Pennsylvania. Biden visited the Korean War Memorial in Philadelphia, where he and his wife also made a brief appearance. Biden also issued a statement marking the occasion, saying it's America's, quote, sacred obligation to care for the country's troops who were sent into harm's way and to care for their families as well. He also called for world-class health care to be provided by the Veterans Affairs Department, stressing that no veteran should be locked out of treatment for injuries experienced in line of duty. Biden is also reportedly spending most of his Wednesday holding private briefings with his transition team. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in will take part in the South Korea Asean virtual summit in the coming hours. Leaders will evaluate their contributions to the partnership so far and discuss the direction of their future cooperation. President Moon will unveil his new Southern Policy Plus, an upgraded strategy that seeks to strengthen ties, cooperation, and exchange based on 3 pillars: people, prosperity, and peace. The top office says it expects the summit to build unity and coordination with the international community to tackle the pandemic. The U.S. and Japan have held talks in Washington over a cost-sharing agreement for Japan's hosting of American troops. The U.S. State Department said Wednesday that the 2-day talks marked the start of negotiations over Japan's new budget for around 55,000 American military personnel stationed in Japan. The current 5-year deal expires next March. While Japan pays nearly $2 billion annually, ex-National Security Advisor John Bolton said in June that the Trump administration has reportedly requested over $8 billion instead. And now for the COVID-19 situation in South Korea. The country reported 143 new COVID-19 cases on Thursday, marking the 5th straight day where figures have been in the triple digits. Over the last few days, several local governments have raised their social distancing levels to 1.5. Our Choi Min-jung explains how this will affect daily life in those areas.
The regions that have currently adopted the stricter 1.5 social distancing level are Asan and Cheonan, located in Chungcheongnam-do Province, Wonju City in Gangwon-do Province, and Suncheon in Jeollanam-do Province. Health authorities warned that the measure could be extended to the capital region if daily infections continue to rise in the next 2 to 3 weeks, with an average of more than 100 cases, resulting in the level being raised to 1.5.
The surge is not slowing down. For the past few weeks, the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases have remained at around 100.
Under level 1.5, people are restricted from dancing or moving seats in bars and clubs, whereas level 1 only puts limits on customer numbers. In addition, the sizes of restaurants and cafes that are required to keep distances between tables is reduced from 150 to 50 square meters. For locations such as weddings, funeral homes, singing rooms, and indoor sports facilities, the number of people is limited to 1 per 4 square meters. Also, in other less intensive facilities such as theaters, concert halls, and PC rooms, people will be required to sit 1 seat apart from each other. Religious activities are allowed with 30% capacity and a minimum of a 1-seat gap between attendees, but dining in together is now banned. Activities with high infection risks such as demonstrations and music concerts are only allowed to take place when there are fewer than 100 people. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea will begin imposing fines on people who do not wear face masks in public beginning Friday as part of its latest efforts to contain the further spread of COVID-19. This comes as the 30-day grace period for the measure announced by the government last month comes to an end. People will be mandated to wear face masks at some 23 multi-use facilities, as well as on public transportation and at hospitals, indoor sports stadiums, and demonstrations. Violators will face a fine of up to $90. Businesses who do not direct their users to wear face masks will also be subject to a fine of up to $2,700. And Europe continues to see a surge in COVID-19 infections and deaths, including the UK, which has now reported over 50,000 deaths. Italy also reached 1 million infections since its initial outbreak early this year. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
Despite measures in place to try and contain the resurgence of COVID-19, Europe continues to see record high numbers. On Wednesday, the UK reached a grim milestone, having reported over 50,000 deaths. The death toll there is higher than any other European country. It's only higher in the US, Brazil, India, and Mexico. Despite the UK's latest nationwide lockdown, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been criticized for moving too slowly into both national lockdowns, as well as for a shortage of personal protective equipment and for failing to protect the elderly in care homes. The country also reported 22,950 infections on Wednesday, up from 20,412 a day earlier. In Italy, the country continues to report grim numbers, surpassing 1 million cases. The country became the 10th country to reach the grim milestone. This includes nearly 33,000 cases reported in the past 24 hours. The health ministry also recorded 623 deaths, up from 580 the day earlier, and the highest figure since early April. A total of 42,953 people have now died, with the country having the highest fatality rate on the European continent at over 4.18%. By comparison, the US's rate is 2.33%. In Russia, the country confirmed 432 deaths on Wednesday, marking the highest number since the start of the pandemic. While figures from Russia's National COVID-19 Information Center show over 31,000 virus-related deaths, the country's official statistics agency said last Friday that more than 55,000 people with COVID-19 died from April through September, which would make Russia's death toll the 5th highest in the world. Despite that, Russia confirmed fewer than 20,000 new cases on Wednesday for the first time in a week. At 1.83 million cases, Russia has the 4th highest virus cases globally. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
European Central Bank Chief Christine Lagarde says the European economy could face a bumpy stop-start recovery despite the latest news of Pfizer's vaccine development. Speaking at an online ECB conference Wednesday, Lagarde spoke of a risk that fearful consumers could drag out an economic rebound and called for policymakers in the EU to bridge the gap until a vaccine is readily available. She added that output in the services sector may struggle to fully recover due to the pandemic. Political unrest in Hong Kong continues as more pro-democracy lawmakers are set to leave the parliament. But this time, they're making the decision voluntarily, unlike 4 of their fellow lawmakers who were forced to do so. Lee Kyung-eun has more.
A group of pro-democracy lawmakers in Hong Kong announced their decision to resign in protest against the city's executive that expelled their fellow legislators for advocating Hong Kong independence.
Today, we'll announce our mass vaccinations, and all our vaccination letters will present to the President of the Legislature tomorrow.
Those 4 sitting legislators had previously been barred from running for re-election for what Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam called a lack of genuine allegiance to Hong Kong. And on Wednesday, they were disqualified from the city assembly shortly after Beijing adopted a new resolution against the so-called unpatriotic legislators. Under the resolution, local authorities can expel lawmakers deemed to be supporting Hong Kong independence, colluding with foreign forces, or threatening national security without having to go through the courts. Lam once again called the decision legitimate.
A person that does not meet the statutory requirements and preconditions for standing for election to the Legislative Council naturally does not meet the statutory requirements and provisions for becoming a LECO member.
The disqualifications come amid growing concerns in the international community over Hong Kong national security law imposed by China. They believe the law undermines Hong Kong's autonomy as it outlaws acts of terrorism, sedition, and subversion, which practically allows authorities to arrest anti-government protesters. The law has sparked calls for Hong Kong's independence from mainland China, which was the basic argument of legislators in their resignation announcement. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
A 91-year-old Korean survivor of Japan's wartime slavery is again calling for Tokyo to provide a formal apology and compensation. At the last pleading session in a lawsuit brought against the Japanese government by the former victims at the Seoul Central District Court on Wednesday, Yong-soo asked the court to help them as the South Korean government is failing to make much progress. She also stressed there's not much time left, explaining she was kidnapped at 14, but she's now in her 90s.
Good morning. We are already heading into mid-November, and today is forecast to be a great day to catch some autumn beauty. After a chilly start, temperatures are rising fast to be on the mild side by the afternoon. Gaps, though, will easily surpass 10 degrees to even 20 degrees Celsius for some parts, and jumps like this can make people get sick. Take good care of yourself. The East Coast and Northeast Seoul are still under dry weather advisory. Mountainous regions in Gangwon province have been under a dry warning for the past few days now. The area is exposed to extreme fire danger, so take precautions. Highs will climb to the upper teens to 20 degrees under plenty of autumn sunshine, and Busan, Gwangju, Gyeongju will make it to 20 degrees this afternoon. Readings will stay above the season norms, while big gaps between the lows and highs will continue. And there will not be a drop of rain from the sky for the time being. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap for us at the hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Korea's COVID-19 quarantine model showed the world how to do things right. From diagnostic kits to drive-through screening centers. Lauded by the foreign press, the K-quarantine system has become the new standard. But it's not only policies and technologies that made K-quarantine possible. The key to the achievement was none other than the belief in we before me. Patients before me, healthcare workers battling on the front lines. The public before me, civil servants in charge of the exhausting quarantine work. More vulnerable neighbors before me, volunteers committed to help